Okay, there we go. Thank you everyone for coming by, and we'll begin our study of the Book of Esther with great anticipation. And I'll offer a prayer for us to start.
Thank you.
Gracious God, for counsel by looking into your written word that was preserved for us by those who did so orally and faithfully for so many centuries, and the way that it has been passed on to us, help us to remember we can trust in all of your scripture, that it is God-breathed, inspired by you, through human writers in history, in a way that ensures us, as you say in the prophet Isaiah, that your word does not proceed from your mouth, and it does not return to you until it accomplishes its purpose. So I thank you that even through translations and all the kinds of things that have been a challenge to give us the transmission of these things before us, you bring us to faith because of the power of your word. And so I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So welcome to the study of Esther. Anybody, if you want to go ahead and open, we're going to just start at the top pretty soon here from chapter 1. And I want to share my screen with and which one's the full screen? They don't look full screen to me. Doesn't make sense. Let's see if that one works. Nope, that wasn't it.
That looks pretty good.
Isn't it? Where is that? Oh.
Stop sharing. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Okay, here we go. Let's try this.
Yeah. Okay, techie.
That's what I want.
There we go.
Now I find the Zoom, and then I share that one. I shut it down by mistake. Okay, that's the one I want. Bingo. Okay.
All right.
So they can follow along at home, and we can. Before we get into the study itself, at the beginning of this month, there was a Jewish festival. I don't expect any of you would know that, but does anybody have a guess?
Oh,
I want to say Eid or something.
It's Purim.
Oh, Purim.
Yeah, I can't get the Purim. The roll the R. Purim. Purim. Purim is a festival that happens early in the spring. And so let me, oops. Okay. It's a Jewish holiday. This year it was at sunset March 2nd through nightfall on March 3rd. And Purim commemorates the saving of the Jewish people by Queen Esther from annihilation at the hands of the Achaemenid Empire, the official name Haman. I've always said Haman, but if you say it in the Hebrew I learned, it's Haman with almost no H. It's almost Haman. And so we'll look briefly, I'm going to have a skip ahead to chapter 9. Just because I want to show how the Purim started. We'll circle back and we'll start at chapter 1 after this, but I wanted to give you a little bit of the context. So if you look at chapter 9, starting at verse 19, this is the origin of how this all came about, and it's very perilous to begin with. Therefore, the Jews of the villages who live in the open towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and fasting, a holiday on which they send gifts of food to one another. Mordecai, we'll learn who Mordecai is, recorded these things and sent letters to all the Jews who were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far. enjoining them that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and also by the 15th day of the same month, year by year. And then verse 22, as the days on which the Jews gained relief from their enemies, and as the month that had been turned for them from sorrow into gladness, from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness, days for sending gifts of food to one another and presents to the poor. Now, how did Purim get its name? It's from the Hebrew word pur, which means lot, or we would say dice. That when Haman was first hatching his plot on when he would set the date for all the Jews to be destroyed, he did what they often did in those times. He wanted to leave it up to the deities, and so he would roll the dice, cast lots. That was very common in those times. And so the whole title of this is when Haman cast lots to decide the date of the destruction of the Jewish people. All right, would you thumb back then to chapter 3, and we'll see when he did that very thing. So 3, 5 through 7. Oops. Okay. When Haman or Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down to him or do obeisance, Haman was infuriated. But he thought it beneath him to lay hands on Mordecai alone. And having been told who Mordecai's people were, Haman plotted to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. I can't say it. I looked it up online. I listened to it. Still, Ahasuerus.
Whatever you said.
Yeah, exactly.
That Ahasuerus, is that another name for Xerxes?
I believe so. Yes.
That's what
yes. It's Xerxes is the transliteration
Okay.
of Ahasuerus.
So when it said he wanted to destroy all Jews, was it Jews only of Mordecai or all Jews everywhere?
All Jews that
Everywhere.
they could get their hands on within the empire.
Do you think Hitler ever read this and was influenced?
I honestly don't know.
Protege.
You know, because he was a big study of history.
Yeah. Well, and we'll see that Haman is considered the prototype of the genocidal. So I don't know. But okay, so
Interesting.
here's what Haman did. In the first year, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, which means lots, or the lot. Purim is plural.
Right.
Put the IM on it, it's plural. So they cast lots before Haman for the day, and they wanted to determine the day, the month, and the lot fell on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Interestingly, I took this out of the New Living Translation because it brings, we don't know what Nisan is, we don't know what Adar is. So this is what the New Living Translation does, it translates it for us. So this is the same verse. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, Ahasuerus, same thing, lots were cast in Haman's presence, called Purim, to determine the best day and month to take action. And the day selected was March 7th, nearly a year later. So the lots really gave them some time. They had 11 months before any of that action was to be taken. All right, and we'll talk about the happenstance of those things as we go. All right. Before we get into the intro and setting here, I don't think, do I have it on my computer? Well, it's not worth it. When Bailey was up for children's time and Mary Beth was sitting with her and Mickey was doing the thing and said, every time you hear the word look in scripture, we're going to do this. I have the most adorable picture of Bailey doing this.
Oh.
Every time you hear the word look, and I've got it ready to put on the screen.
Good.
Just because it brings a smile every time I see it.
What do you want?
Down.
Right here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Whoops, sorry, we're not muted.
You're okay. We're glad you're here. So I'm going to do something to challenge you. Not every time you hear the word look, but every time you, in this study of Esther, see or hear an explicit reference to God, I want you to raise your hands up like this.
Only one can go that way.
So, all right, so, and at home, I'm raising my hands up and shaking my hands. So when you come across, if you come across an explicit reference to God anytime,
Okay,
all right, that's when you do it, so.
great.
And I'll try to take a picture.
Every other word.
Okay, so let's get a little introduction as we're getting ready. And go ahead to chapter 1. And if anyone is brave enough to try and read with, I know the pronunciations are difficult, I just want the first 2 verses to start, if somebody would do that.
Okay. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over an 120 provinces, that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace.
Okay, all right, so in her version, and I'm not sure what.
It's King James.
It is?
Mhm.
Okay, but it said India and Ethiopia. Is it New King James?
Mhm.
Oh, it's New King James, okay. All right, if some of you may have an older version that would say a couple of different words other than.
Susa.
Susa is the name of the city,
James version.
but the empire stretches from, hers says India to Ethiopia, which is correct, but that's a more modern. Some of your translations, maybe they don't, they have the older names. All right, well, if they don't, I'll let you know.
Yeah,
Won't keep it a
Kush.
secret. Okay. Yeah, Cush is one, and I can't remember the other one. I will in a minute here. Okay, so as you know, when we do our Old Testament studies, I remember how much of a tribal culture that we are trying to transport our imaginations into. And one of the things that the people who first heard these things, you remember how tribal names are given. When some incident happens, like in Dances with Wolves, that's what I go to.
Mhm.
And what was the name of the woman? Stands with fists.
Okay.
All right, she didn't get that name until that particular thing happened. And then he was Shumani Tutunka, something or other, whatever, Dances with Wolves, got his name. Tribal names were assigned or the name was reassigned based on some significant thing. And so they all had a translation. In fact, we don't just say, well, look at that.
There she is. Yay!
She made my day. She made my day.
Do you want to sit over here?
Yeah, there's room. Come here, sit on my left in the really naughty chair.
Let me pull it back as far as possible because I think it's only a cold one. I've been around the cold one now. Well, 2 weeks would just drop everything.
All right, well, the gang's all here almost.
Yay.
Okay, so I was talking about, I believe, the province.
The tribe name.
Names.
Oh, the tribal names, yes. And I want to, whenever we start, I like to give you the translations of the names so that when you hear Esther, we know that as a proper name, but there's an actual Hebrew or a Persian translation of that. And her name Hadassah is the Hebrew. So I'm going to give you all throughout this in a very tedious fashion. I'm going to translate all the names for you.
Ours did say India to Sudan.
India to Sudan. Okay.
Oh,
A
okay.
little different. I'm going to give you a map soon so you get an idea of it. Ahasuerus is the name applied in the Hebrew Bible to 3 different rulers of Persia and to a Babylonian official. So that seems to be transferable. It's kind of like Caesar. A transliteration of it is Xerxes or Artaxerxes. So some of your passages, some of your translations will say Xerxes, others will say Ahasuerus or Artaxerxes, and it's all interchangeable. Both are names of multiple Achaemenid dynasty Persian kings. Okay, so that's where we're at. To give you a little context of when this is thought to have been, the setting of this is about 100 years after the exile of the Jewish people from Jerusalem into Babylon. Now, if you'll note, when the people were taken in waves into exile in Babylon, when Jerusalem fell, Jeremiah said, get used to it, you're going to be there for a lifetime. And it wasn't until 90 years later that they were allowed to return because Babylon had been conquered by Cyrus of Persia.
Oh, yes.
So now, so this is about about 100 years after. So a couple of waves of the people who were going to return to Jerusalem, they did. But not all the Jews did. After 90 years there, they had, it was a diaspora. They dispersed, and it's like, well, I'm better off here. And they had not lost their identity. They were still identified as the Jewish people. So it wasn't the geography that motivated all of them. Okay, so that's the time and setting. So in the Persian Empire, and you'll see how vast it is, there were Jews a lot in the Babylon area of it. In fact, Mordecai, we'll find out, has a Babylonian name, even though he's a heroic Jew. So lots of interesting things there. So, okay, so the name literally means lion king or king among kings. Now, we'll read, and you'll pick this up, he's characterized as a powerful, impulsive, and sometimes vain ruler of a vast empire. I'm gonna, if my roommate from college ever hears this on the internet, I might get in trouble. He writes books, and his humor and his writing style are bitingly sarcastic and dry humor, and sometimes beyond me. I don't quite get where he's going with this. His first book was called Gimme Shevin, and I believe that was a playoff on that. He was out of college. He was looking for a job, and he ended up in trying to do something in the internet that blew up, and what the .com boom was happening, and then it all fell apart. And the people he met, and his boss apparently was a drinker. And at one point he said, "Give me Shevin," and he didn't know what that meant. But the whole book is strange. Why do I say this? Well, it was his first book, and he wanted me to read it. And I slogged through it.
Good for you.
He wanted me to give it a little review on the website. And the best I could come up with is, I laughed, I cried, I lost all faith in humanity.
Wow.
Now, why do I say that? Well, because I'm a goofball, but there's also, when you read this, and you read about, for example, King Ahasuerus and his, if you're not tempted to be losing faith in all humanity, it's just, some of the things that humanity at its worst. And so be prepared for that. It's not going to be the end of the story or the complete story, but there's a lot in here that you're going to say, boy, these characters are just the dregs of who we are. At least that's the way I receive it. So, powerful, impulsive, vain. This same Ahasuerus, who ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia, someone said Sudan, there's Cush, and Hodu is the other one. So I put the Hebrew words up there. Hodu is what the old translations would say. Probably the old King James would say Hodu to Cush, but now they've updated it. Okay, Hodu refers to the Indus Valley, or modern-day India, Pakistan. That's why they translate it that way. Cush refers to the region south of Egypt, often translated as Ethiopia or Nubia. So that's just an idea to. Now here is how large that empire. Wow. I mean, it was. That's an empire. Holy mackerel! Now parts on the white parts, especially on the left side of the screen,
Right?
are other parts of Egypt and Africa. So it only takes up part of the continent. There's other land there.
Okay.
And then in the Arabian area there, where the Arabian Peninsula is and so forth, there's other land there, but that wasn't part of the empire.
Okay.
But the 127 provinces, and way over on the right would be where India starts.
Right.
So, okay, so now it's got the old names.
That's cool.
So you can see just to the left of the star, Babylonia.
Right.
So that was the center when the Babylonians took over.
Right.
If you go even further to the left, you see where the Mediterranean Sea
Right.
is, and on its coast there, its eastern coast, or it's the west of the land, that's where the Holy Land is. But just to give you an idea of the size, and maybe we'll have to narrate this for the people at home, but I'm going to try and point it out. Under David and Solomon, when they thought that the kingdom had reached its pinnacle and all their neighbors were sending them tribute and they had a vast influence, it was the biggest that the empire for the Jewish people ever was under David and Solomon. And it would have been about, I'm going to circle my hands around the Dead Sea here, about that big. So to them, that was the big empire.
Oh.
Maybe into Assyria a little bit here.
Huh.
But now when Babylon took over, it expanded, and when Persia took over, they really, now we're getting into the epic kind of hugeness of this. Now, the king of Persia was different than the Babylonians. The Babylonian idea was that when we conquer people, and we need to put them down, and so that they don't rise up against us again. And they thought the best way to do that was either wipe them out, or the ones who remain, if they have any agency or wherewithal whatsoever, if they've got brains, if they've got resources, ship them off to Babylon. So all the smartest and wealthiest and strongest were taken from Jerusalem and made to live in Babylon for 90 years. That was the Babylonian way of trying to keep everything under their thumbs. The Persian way was different. And the Persian ruler, Cyrus, when this empire became conquered and theirs, Cyrus was not one to say, remove the people from their provinces. He was one to say, more benevolently, let them live in their provinces. Or in the case of the Jews, he said, you may return. Not only may you return, I'll give you some seed money to rebuild your temple. Very different kind of way of going.
Why did they decide to let them go after all at that point?
The Persians, that was their philosophy.
Kept them locked up.
Cyrus didn't think that it was necessary to keep the people away from their homeland in order to quell and keep them under their thumb. Cyrus, his was, they're defeated, and there's no need to rub it in their face. They can be in their provinces as long as they're part of the empire and behave.
Okay.
So it's just a completely different
Philosophy.
Yeah, a different way of looking at it. So some of these, now some of the words, and I'm sorry that Gloria couldn't get a better one, but this says Arabia, so we can, that says Assyria, we kind of get that. I can't even read that one to see what that one was. Thrace and Lydia, we hear from Paul's journeys later. Caspians, Persis or Persia, and then Susa is going to be where that star is.
Okay.
Okay, so that, maybe that's a little too much detail, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how huge. Now, there was a Jewish population in some of the provinces. I don't know how far flung they were, but certainly in the Babylonian, right there to the left of the star. So there was a significant number of people who still had their Jewish identity and heritage.
What was the main worship of Persia, the majority?
I want to say Zoroastrianism. I don't know when it took hold, but I think, yeah, Presbyterian. Zoroastrianism, which actually influenced the theology of the Old Testament. I don't want to get too far off track with that, but okay. So I'm going to give you some of the characters that we run through. But would someone please read from verse 3 to 11 and do the best you can with the pronunciations? Vashti is one of them. So.
And in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. The military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa. The garden had hangings of white and blue linen, fastened with cords of white linen, and purple materials with silver rings on marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on mosaic pavement, porphyry, whatever it is, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones.
Wow.
Wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other, and the royal wine was abundant in keeping with the king's liberality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink with no restrictions, for the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. How far did you say to go?
11.
To 11? Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbana, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing a royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at.
Okay, so we're going to unpack some of the things in that place there. Good reading, by the way.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, Vashti. I grew up with an Americanized pronunciation of that, Vashti, and the only reason I know that is one of my cousins or aunts who lived next door to my grandma. Her name, everybody called her Ty. And boy, as an adolescent boy, when I found out her name was Vashti, oh, that's a weird name.
Yeah.
I loved weird names as a kid.
Okay.
I didn't know it was biblical. So she was given the name Vashti,
Vashti.
but she only went by Ty. I don't think she liked it either.
I had a friend whose mother was Vashti, and she went by Vashti.
Vashti.
Is that right?
That's the more correct, less
Same mother,
Americanized.
his mother.
It's, oh my gosh, when I learned my friend's mother's name was Dorcas, as an adolescent boy.
Oh,
I've since met, well, I've since met, we had a Dorcas in the Muskegon congregation who was a pillar of the church. So I had to get over my, trying to make fun of people's names. Okay, so Vashti is a name of Persian origin, means excellent, most desired, best, beautiful.
okay.
Now, as we read in this story, here we go, when commanded to appear before a drunken banquet to show off her beauty, she said, forget it. Now, we can admire her for that, and people do, but it cost her dearly. So it resulted in her deposition and replacement as queen by Esther. But because of her standing up, she of dignity who stood up against the demeaning treatment of women. Did you notice when I talked about this party, this celebration,
Bars open.
6 months, 180 days, and it was only for the hoity-toity, the nobles of the provinces. It was all the people that you wanted to impress if you were the emperor there. The common people, no. They didn't get any part of that 6 months. And it was open bar the whole time. And we'll find out later that after the 6 months was concluded, then just to throw a little bone to the people, they had a 1 week celebration where anybody could come. But for the 6 months, this was the big display of see how powerful and impressive I am, that I can put on this great play and have an open bar the whole time. Well, you can imagine the behavior of these entitled, ego-struck, and so it was awful. And just reading this without knowing that, you can almost read that last verse. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman. And if you're ignorant, you'll say, well, she should be very flattered. But if you understand what's really happening, not only is the king showing off, but he's exploiting her. And now some people say, some people say that she was to come in wearing her crown, and they think nothing else. I don't know that that's the case. Whatever it was demeaning.
Could be.
She knew that to go in there was to be ogled by a bunch of drunk jerks. And so she said, not doing it. Oh my. So there was an act of courage right there. But certainly they had fallout from that. Okay, let me come back here. All right, so then it says in verse 10, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine,
Of course, yeah.
he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, and lists their names. So, and I told you I was going to go detailed on these. So, Mehuman, faithful. Biztha, booty, but it's not Judy booty. I was going to Judy Bithsta. No, it's like spoils, the booty of a battle or something, or bound. It's not always clear, these ancient translations.
Right.
Harbona is, well, I used the word donkey. When I looked up, it was the more crass word, driver. Or, I've never heard of this word before, droughtiness, and it really means dry.
Okay.
So, a big tha, it would be gift of God. Oh, yeah, well, okay, yeah, she's, well, okay, so these are in the names. That's good that you got that.
Only one arm went up.
Well, that's okay.
That was half of where we were going.
Well, then here we go again. Abagtha, God-given or fortunate one. And Zethar is star or brilliance. And I like this one for carcass. It's really interesting. I don't know if that's the etymology of the word carcass, but it is the covering of a lamb, like you'd say a wolf in sheep's clothing. So it might be the carcass of a lamb. I don't know.
Mine's spelled with a K.
Okay.
The carcass is?
Yeah, the K.
So that's just trivia for you.
Interesting.
Okay, and then it goes on. I'm going to go later here. Let me talk a little bit more about what was happening here. So she refused him, and so we need to look on now from 12 to 14. If somebody would read 12 to 14.
When they conveyed the king's order to Queen Vashti, she refused to come. This made the king furious, and he burned with anger. He immediately consulted with his wise advisors, who knew all the Persian laws and customs, for he always asked their advice. The names of these men were Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, 7 nobles of Persia and Media. They met with the king regularly and held the highest positions in the empire.
Okay, so these were the wise advisors, and the king, apparently, it says he always consulted that. Interesting. Some kings didn't feel they needed to do that. So. Karshina is a lamb sleeping. Shithar, again, that thar comes in star. You'll see that as a theme here. Admatha is either unrestrained or a testimony to them. Meres, white dove or courage. Marsena, worthy. And then Memucan, dignified or prepared. I don't know that that's going to make any difference to you as we study here, but the people would be able to know these translations as they heard those names, because that's what the words literally meant. Okay, now we go to, and we need to finish out the chapter. I don't think I did that yet. So, So let's read from 15 to the end of the chapter.
According to law, what must be done to Queen Vashti, he asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. The Memucan replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of all the provinces of King Xerxes. For the queen's conduct will become known to all women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also, let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then when the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all his vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands from the least to the greatest. The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, so the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and to each people in their own language, proclaiming that every man should be ruled over his own household using his native tongue.
So,
Wow.
now, I don't know, I grew up very aware of a man's home is his castle, or I am the king of this castle.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I grew up in, and I knew of. And so that's this idea. But as you read this, hopefully you kind of have a sour taste in your mouth for this type of domineering.
It's very much like the movie Pleasantville.
Okay,
If you've ever seen Pleasantville,
it's not coming to mind, but I think I have, yeah.
it's all black and white, and they do not see color because they're so blind, and it is exactly that. A woman doesn't have a brain, she is a object.
So right away, we're seeing people who are ego-filled, drunk on power. When it says power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Here's a stark example of that. So not only did his advisors say, well, if she can disobey you,
Yeah.
oh, you gotta nip this in the bud, Barney Fife, because, boy, you don't do something about this, and all the men are gonna be in, oh, good Lord. I mean, you can see how this. So, and he was foolish enough to go along with it. And so he made this decree, and they were all very pleased with it. Oh, yay, see, look how strong and wonderful he is. You remember the son of King Solomon, I'm going to forget his name, when they lost the kingdom. When Solomon died and his son was taking over, and they went to the northern tribes, and the tribe said, okay, your father was getting to be really, really tough on us. I mean, to the point where we're not sure we're in on this thing. If you can relent and treat us well, we'll accept you as king. So he was very young at the time. He was a teenager probably. And he went to the wise advisors of Solomon, and they said, yep, you would do well to ease up on them and earn their favor as king. So that was the wise counsel from the elders. Then he went to his peers, his teenage friends.
Oh.
You're the king. Show them who's boss. And that's what he did. He listened to his peers, and he said to the people, you thought Solomon was tough on you? Oh, wait till you get a load of how I'm going to oppress. And basically in that decision, the kingdom split and was lost. So another drunk with power, ill-advised, we repeat these things in history, unfortunately. So this goes out that every...
Was it Rehoboam?
Rehoboam, thank you.
Rehoboam?
Yes. Yep, thank you. So we finished up chapter 1. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script. Now, that's interesting, we looked at that big map, there's some different languages across this, so that was not uncommon. And so he had it all translated and proclaimed that every man should be the ruler of his own home and should say whatever he pleases. And so we see that. Now, if I were to just pick that one verse out and base my life on, see, the Bible says this is the way things are supposed to be. People do that. They cherry pick verses. That's why we look at the bigger context, not only in that book, but in all of Scripture. Because if you just pick out little parts that you resonate with and say this is God's will without knowing the
Story. Oh, God.
So here we go.
Good.
Okay, so we'll move on to chapter 2. And if I could have, oops, I'm going to click on this to get it to work. Okay, somebody read please 1 through 4. Chapter 2, 1 through 4.
Later, even after the king's anger had cooled down, he kept thinking about what Vashti had done and about his proclamation against her. So some of the king's advisors were close to him suggested, "Why don't you make a search to find some beautiful young virgins? You can appoint officials in every province of the empire and have them bring all these beautiful young girls to your harem here in Susa, the capital city. Put them in the care of Haggai, the eunuch who is in charge of your women, and let them be given a beauty treatment, a spa day."
Oh, wait till you find out. Yeah, it's a spa day like no other. Okay, so I like the way that Eugene Peterson's The Message, which is not a translation but a paraphrase, with his interpretation. I like what he says. I'm going to read this to you. This is from The Message. Later, when King Xerxes' anger had cooled, he was having second thoughts about what Vashti had done, or Vashti, and what he had ordered against. So there's this little glimpse of, now that the wine's wearing off, maybe he's coming to his senses. But unfortunately, his advisors say, well, we can't let that happen. We're on a good roll here. We want to get rid of him. We want to keep this going. So before he could come to his senses completely, that's when the young attendants came and said, oh, let's begin a search for all the best of the beautiful young women. Well, it didn't take much to persuade him. Unfortunately, that's the nature of it. So any thoughts he had of relenting on his treatment of Vashti, they were fleeting, and he didn't act on them. And she still was paying the price by being deposed.
And then there was one more one more verse that she didn't read about me, which who pleases him best would be the next queen.
Yes, yeah. That's the whole thing that they proposed. Yeah, we'll for all these provinces, we'll bring in the most beautiful. We'll have the Miss America, Miss Persia, whatever contest, and you can have your, try them out.
Must have been where it started.
It's
So the universe.
And
this universe started.
Yeah. So, okay, Susa, I translated that for you. It's lily or something that has a white quality is what Susa means.
Okay.
And that was the name of the city. Haggai, the eunuch, it literally meant eunuch or separated. Okay, so now 2 more verses, if somebody would read 5 and 6.
At that time, there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who, with King Jehoiachin of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar.
Okay, goodness, let's unpack some of the names here so we know what we're talking about.
So he was from Benjamin, which is one of the original 12 tribes of Israel.
So this gives us a record.
Yeah, from cloud.
Now, I'm going to unpack Mordecai in a later slide. So, but I'll say Jair was his father, Jewish, and the Hebrew meaning of Jair was one who spreads light.
Oh,
The tribe that he was from, Benjamin, son of my right hand, or son of favor.
mhm.
And then it talked about Kish and Shimei.
Mhm.
He was that now again. Mordecai is again a descendant of these ancestors. Kish means snaring. Shimei means renown. And then it talked about the rulers. Jehoiachin. That was his family had been among those who, with King Jehoiachin of Judah, had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon. So he's going back to 100 years ago when they were shipped off. My ancestors were in that shipment along with the.
So he shows up.
And who did that? But was King Nebuchadnezzar. So Jehoiachin, Jewish king, who was defeated and taken into exile, Yahweh has established. And Judah itself, that region that they still refer to in many ways, is praise or thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
So now let's get to moving on to Jerusalem. Ironically, it translates as city of peace.
Huh.
And I remember sitting across the Kidron Valley on a bench, looking through bushes, and hidden in the bushes was barbed wire from all the military things that had gone on there. And we sat in that area, not knowing, of course, exactly where the spot was, but it's where Jesus looked upon the city across the valley and wept.
Mhm.
Oh, city of peace, city of peace. Now, in our translation it says Jerusalem. I think it's very pointed to, oh, city of peace, if only you knew the things that made for peace. And it moved him. And I'm sure it still moves him and us today. That the city of peace has known nothing of peace. It just continually is. And so
Could it be inner peace instead of literal?
well, I guess you can interpret it that way. It's just, to me, it's ironic.
Yeah.
That the city of peace, and there I'm sitting there, beautiful bushes, but if you
Anything
look
but.
closely, there's razor wire in them, rusted out, and it's just a constant reminder of the irony, I think. Okay. Babylon, come on, don't do that. Babylon translates to gate of the gods, and gods with a small g, capital G. And then Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian emperor who caused the exile, translates to protect your servant, or interestingly, a prophet is a preservative jar. Prophets are the one in whom those things are preserved. Interesting. Okay. Verse 7, I'll just go ahead and read here. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Mordecai, and I haven't done Mordecai's name yet, but I will. I don't know where it's going to pop up, but it should soon. Mordecai had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, that's her Hebrew name, who was also called Esther, her Persian name. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. Now that's according to custom that we're used to.
Right.
Especially when the male that was dependent upon died, a fellow kinsman was to be the redeemer. And so Mordecai was her redeemer by adopting her and raising her and treating her as his own daughter. So Hadassah in Hebrew, it's a feminine name meaning myrtle tree or myrtle branch.
Right.
It's derived from the word hadass, and it has this idea of courage, righteousness, or sweet fragrance. So her Hebrew name it works into the story. Courage, righteousness, sweet fragrance. So that Hadassah was great. But, like when you move into another culture, your name is no longer Kunta Kinte, you are Toby.
Right.
She moves to Persia, and the Persian name that they all called her was Esther. Where did that come from? Esther, I'm sorry, this goes on more with the Hadassah. That's redundant, sorry about that. Okay, the name Esther has a complex origin likely stemming from the old Persian word stara for star. And you think of Ishtar, the goddess. They had a goddess of the stars, Ishtar. So, and I told you that would be a theme. Everywhere you see that Thar, it has something to do with star. It's deeply associated, though, with its Hebrew root word. So when the Hebrews hear this, they hear the consonants, what we would call STR.
Right.
And the Hebrew word, this may be a play on words, it may be a coincidence, but the Hebrew, when they said Esther, it meant hidden, concealed, and believed to be a reference to her hidden identity as a Jew. And we'll find out that for part of the story, it was not known what her family origin was because she lived in Babylon.
Right.
And nobody knew, and that wasn't something that was on a need-to-know basis, according to Mordecai at least. And they didn't need to know. But they say that the word hidden, and the Jews interpret it this way, also refers to the hidden nature of God's intervention in the Purim story. Now, I didn't anticipate this. I did a boo-boo. Because when I said raise your hands, it was when we're reading the text of the scripture.
Oh.
Not what Pastor Jim put up there. And I wasn't counting the translation of the names. So, but I guess what I'll do is give the spoiler here. The reason I was teasing with that is Esther is a peculiar book and very brilliant, I believe. It does not mention God as a character or being involved. So the idea was,
Interesting.
if we were to read through the whole book,
Nobody would raise their hand.
you wouldn't raise your hand because there is no explicit reference to God.
Come on.
But the beauty of the story is God is implied deeply throughout.
Oh, yeah.
God is working in the background, and you'll see the things that people could write off to coincidence. But God's providence is the read between the lines part of this whole thing. And the Jewish people believe that, and because Esther, in their language, meant hidden, they thought that was a reflection of the hidden nature of God's intervention throughout the whole story that led to their Purim festival. So it's pretty interesting. But when I was in seminary, I remember, that was one of the characteristics of Esther, that God's not mentioned.
Interesting.
So,
I never thought about that.
but I didn't realize that it was a brilliant technique to let the reader.
Are there any other books that don't like that you know of, that you've studied or heard? That is just inferred or implied?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Some people would say Ecclesiastes, but there are some mentions of God there. So, but anyway, this was a storytelling and writing technique.
Okay.
So if it was basically the historical point of view of what was happening in the culture, how did they select Esther to become part of the Testament?
Oh, in the canon of the Old Testament.
Yes. What was its merit, would you say?
Oh my goodness, we'll get to it. I mean, First of all, they weren't scandalized that it didn't say God. In fact, they saw God in this, and I do as well. I think, and the impact that it has, the idea of the first prototype of a person who wants to destroy all of God's people, and then being rescued. I don't know the full inclusion of the canon and how it came, but this is part of the history section. They would treat this as history, even though it's almost like a novel.
Right.
So you have the law and the prophets in the Old Testament, but then you get into the section of history and wisdom literature.
Yeah, ours actually said it was the last historical book.
Yes. Yeah. So this is one of the books. Now, the Chronicles would have been one.
Okay.
First and Second Samuel, First and Second Chronicles. So there are historical books. Ruth fits into that apparently too, and we've studied Ruth. So, but this was such and it remains such a powerful story for our Jewish cousins and for ourselves. And I hope you'll see in it the implied nature of God's activity, even in the midst of this human cesspool. And not even the Jewish people were without, they weren't completely innocent and flawless throughout this story. And one of the things that people affirm is that God works with humanity in its sinfulness to bring good. So yes, the Persian king was horrible, and the things that they did, and we'll find out Haman was just as bad. And Mordecai is lifted up as a hero. Esther's lifted up as a hero, but they weren't perfect. And so it's interesting to see. God doesn't work with perfect people because
No.
He can't find any. He only has to work, he works with what he has to work with. Okay, so now to Mordecai. I told you his name is actually, he was born in Babylon. He was descendant of the Jews because we said his ancestors came over in the exile, and we knew he was from the tribe of Benjamin. But interestingly, Mordecai means of Marduk, which is a Babylonian god. Or bitter oppression, which that also fits. But the word Marduk in there, a servant of Marduk, that's a Babylonian god. What an ironic name for a Jewish hero. And they still use that name to this day for some of their people use that as a name in lots of cultures, Mordecai. It could be a combination of the Hebrew words mar, which is bitter. We remember that from Naomi. Don't call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara, which means bitter, after all the things that happened to her. And then dak in Hebrew means crushed. So there's a Persian meaning or a Babylonian twist on it. But then when you hear these words, they're all kind of related in these languages. And so the Hebrew people would hear bitter, crushed. Okay. Okay, very good. And again, the Hebrew hiddenness that we saw in Esther's name concealed the nature of God's providence throughout the whole book of Esther, as God's name is never explicitly mentioned in this book. It's a very unique book because of that way. Okay, let's forge ahead. If someone would be willing to read 2:8 through 17.
As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Heggai's care. Heggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids, specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Every day Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. How far did you want to go?
17.
Got it. Before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments.
12 months, there's your spa day.
It's about a year.
You can go for an hour.
6 months with oil of myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments.
Wow.
When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Shazgaz, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted his younger cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Hagar, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the 7th year of his reign.
One more.
And the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti.
Wow.
Okay, so obviously she was,
International.
A concubine mixed
she was
with-
impressive to everyone around her, apparently. And, but we can read this chapter in less than 5 minutes, but it spans a period of over a year. And so the young women from all the provinces were brought in. Who knows how many score or hundreds of women were paraded before the king, and he did his little sampling. I say crassly.
Supposedly at 700.
But you see how they, when it comes to the emperor and how the emperor was treated, and the extravagance of it is just mind-blowing. I mean, that not even the beautiful maidens could even be in his presence until they had a year. 6 months of oils and 6 months of perfumes and treatments and whatever. Makes me feel bad that, presenting myself to Chris, I should shower. Maybe.
6 months.
So a whole year of preparation. And it said by the 7th year of his reign. So we know that the exile took place, at the beginning of this, and so this time is passing here. So you have to be very patient in your thoughts with how long Esther was a part of this process and all the things that were going on in the background.
Wow.
It helps us to understand the story that way.
But you notice, you never hear anything about what he did to himself to present himself.
Oh,
It was all about power and control.
Is it the Man in the Iron Mask? Is that the one where the Leo DiCaprio
Yes,
movie?
yes, it
Where
is.
there's twins,
Mhm.
and his twin is imprisoned,
Yes.
and he's the king, and they put his twin in a mask so that no one will know that he's the
Mhm.
brother.
Right.
And he is just the most vile, and he does this very thing.
Yes.
Use the women and then, okay, see you later. What? It just turns your stomach. And the part of the movie is when people try to replace him with his brother. His brother is the opposite. And then no one's going to recognize that.
No.
Because
Actually speaks a lot louder.
Yeah. So, but that kind of extravagance and debauchery, it's rampant throughout history and in our stories as well. Shushgaz is the eunuch who name means servant of the beautiful. Here comes a question I can't answer.
No, it's not a question. I was just saying, the notes of mine, it says a number of dates in the Book of Esther can be cross-checked with the dates in surviving Persian records and related accurately to our modern calendar.
Yes, yeah. So that's one of the, a lot of people wonder in the Bible, can we rely on this as history? Because a lot of it is not written as history. Or it doesn't emphasize the chronological importance of getting those facts straight as it does the meaning of what it means.
Right.
So that's part of it. So, and some people for that will say, well, then it's just not reliable as history. What we can look at and say, there are parts of it that we can actually put to the test and say, this is reliable history.
Right.
And the parts that aren't as easily documented, that's up for interpretation. But thank you, Patty, for that, because yes, this has some text outside of Scripture that we have that corroborate. So that's good to know that these events. That's why this was listed in the historical books. Okay, did we talk about Abihail? Yes. Okay, that was in verse 15. Esther was the daughter of Abihail. And her name means my father is might, father of strength, or my father is strength. That again would be a Jewish or Hebrew word. Okay, in 2:12, we read that. This year of preparation of the young women coming before the king. It reflects an ancient Persian royal custom of this mandatory year-long 2-stage purification and beauty regimen before meeting King Ahasuerus. The practice underscores the immense wealth and power. It's like the 6 months party for all the nobles. You have to be so opulent and so over the top. And the power of the Persian Empire. It's consistent with archaeological findings of ancient and even cosmetic practices in Susa, which means lily. It's the city's name. So that underscores Patty's part, that they can actually unearth things that show that these practices were part of that Persian culture. We read about, where's Bigthana? Did we get there, or is that?
No.
Okay, that's, we have to keep going here. So we have to pick up at verse 18, and let's take that to the end of the second chapter. Would somebody read 18 through 23?
And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts of royal liberality. This says Mordecai uncovers a conspiracy. When the virgins were assembled a second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. But Esther had kept secret her family's background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do. For she continued to follow Mordecai's instructions, as she had done when he was bringing her up. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And the report was investigated and found to be true. The two officials were impaled on poles. All this was recorded in the book of the Annals in the presence of the king.
Yay.
And I looked up, apparently that book is available. So
Really?
if we can assign it to Lori to go home and read the book, the history of the King Xerxes, memorize it, and then give us a report. And
There you go.
Oh, you have that.
To tomorrow.
I'll give you till Monday.
Okay.
You have Xerxes.
Wow.
Okay, so again, he finds the one that he favors to be queen and throws a huge, lavish banquet, declares a holiday in all the provinces, and all of this. And in the meantime, it reminds us that because she had a Persian name, she lived somewhere in the Babylonian region, Mordecai said, you just, when they give you the application, don't put that you're Jewish on there. No, they don't need to know that. Now, let's speculate. Why would Mordecai want to keep that secret?
Because they were the ones who were brought from Jerusalem to Babylon.
Yeah, their history had been
That they
oppression,
were already
and
pushed.
we will find out that the Babylonians had been conquered, but there were still Babylonians who had conquered them that are part of this new kingdom.
Right.
They had, and their enemies went way back to even before the Babylonians, to the Amalekites, and so there were enemies, historical enemies, all put together in this conglomeration of the kingdom. And so, as a cautious Jew, he didn't want to make that public.
Some things are better left unsaid.
Yeah. So that may not put you in a good place. So then this strange plot twist that really helps the book pivot is that Esther becomes aware from these eunuchs, and Bigtha or Bigthana,
Bless you.
bless you, given a fortune, and then Teresh means strict, firm, or severe. Again, that probably doesn't enlighten you a lot, but that's what they mean. Apparently, Esther became aware that these two were plotting to assassinate the king. And probably, as is typical, she didn't take matters into her own hands. She went to her male kinsman redeemer, and she went to Mordecai. And then they got an audience with the king, and she told the king, with Mordecai present, what was happening, gave the credit to Mordecai, and then it was investigated. And they found out, indeed, this plot was taking place, and so they executed the 2 assassins. And the result is that we end chapter 2 with Mordecai now being lifted up and having great status with the king.
Hero.
He's going to be trusted, and he's going to be
Esther, yeah.
he's going to be given a high place. So there's an act of providence. Here we are in the Persian Empire, where the Jews are not always safe, and Mordecai, because of this act of providence, and because of their courageous actions, he ends up kind of like Joseph in Egypt. He ends up one of the high officials in the Persian court.
They need to move with this.
Okay. I'm going to try and get us through chapter 3 today, so hopefully we're in good shape to move forward on that. Okay, so if we can read in chapter 3, I'm not sure how far we'll go, just if somebody would start chapter 3 and then I'll holler.
Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, over all the other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire.
Okay, stop. Big twist here. Okay, so we've got, Mordecai, hey, that's great. Mordecai has got a high position. But it didn't last long as far as Xerxes also promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, and he was an Agagite, and I wanted to help you know about this. Haman, often translated as magnificent or splendid from its Persian roots. Others might say noisy or tumult. And some suggest that the name may be derived from the Elamite god Humban, which means illustrious. So it's kind of vague as to what the meaning of that is. But what isn't vague is he is referred to as an Agagite, implying that here is a descendant of the Amalekites, who were long established historical enemies of Israel.
Oh, yeah.
So now the plot thickens. We ended chapter 2 with the Jewish Mordecai being lifted up, and we begin chapter 3 with the absolute opposite, the sworn enemy, also given a place of
And her
honor.
anonymity is even better now.
This is not going to be good.
So you're reading the drama of this in the way that it's supposed to come across to us. As the chief minister or vizier of the king, that vizier doesn't really go back to Persia, that's more of a Muslim or an Egyptian, but it's the idea of the kind of the one who is the chief of staff.
Right.
The top one who basically carries out. It's what Joseph was when he was in Egypt.
Right.
He was made the vizier. He was.
So do we assume then that Mordecai knows that he is from?
The Amalekite.
Yes.
I assume that. Yeah, I think
And
it's
that's
pretty.
why we're going to have the clash.
And because they took pains to put that detail in, he's an Agagite. They didn't have to put that in there, but
Well,
all the Jewish people reading this may, oh yeah.
and also when Mordecai then refuses to bow to him.
You understand a little bit of the context, yeah. So there's a bitterness that goes back. Okay, Ethel, I rudely interrupted you. Would you want to go on at verse 2, and I'll rudely interrupt you again?
I'll try to be prepared for stopping. Okay. All the king's officials would bow down before him to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Then the palace officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, "Why are you disobeying the king's command?" They spoke to him day after day, but still he refused to comply with the order. So they spoke to Haman about this to see if he would tolerate Mordecai's conduct, since Mordecai had told them he was a Jew. Whoops.
It was surprise.
When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes.
Okay, we'll stop there. Now, this parallels what happened with Queen Vashti.
Right.
She displeased the king, and it wasn't enough to just give her the consequences. They had to put the consequences on all women everywhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in this case, if Mordecai, the Jew, is not bowing down to me, you can see where Haman's like, here we go again, the old enemies. And it's, I can't, if I just went over and whacked Mordecai, that would be one thing. But this needs to extend to the whole clan, the whole. So again, it's this exaggerated revenge or bitterness that takes a bad expression of anger and makes it
Do you think the king
exponential.
knew this when he promoted this man?
Haman.
About him being Jewish?
No, when he did,
Oh,
when he promoted Haman, do you think he knew that this was gonna happen?
As an underlying.
In
That's
the
an
back
do
of
it.
his mind
As
somewhere?
there
I did-
Xerxes.
I didn't think that, but I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not sure what the king's
It's like let
motivations
somebody
were,
else take the
or,
fall.
or why Haman was lifted up. I don't have that.
Yeah,
If Lori finds that in the book of,
yeah, Lori,
then
this is your mission.
What was that book?
Should you
That's
the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign.
Oh,
Look it up on Google.
We have the book,
okay. Coming to your library.
we got it.
Actually, I do. My grandfather has a book on Xerxes,
Really?
Yes, we
right,
do.
it's at least 100 years old.
All right, so now you've got
You
the,
have time.
there's your text.
Okay.
Okay,
So Haman demanded bowing. The king apparently was on board with that. Mordecai being a people that he just couldn't bring himself to do it. And Haman is viewed as the epitome of a bullied leader
Yeah.
and an enemy of the faith.
see,
So you can decide if you agree with that, but that's, whoops, go back. And where it said Hamadatha, where was that?
That's in verse 1.
One, yeah, it was, okay, Haman's father, Hamadatha.
Right.
I thought that was interesting, troubler of the law. So,
Instigator.
yeah, right.
there you go.
Agitator. And Agagite, again, is used to identify Haman, descendant of King Agag, king of the Amalekites. And that signifies a direct ancestral link to Israel's hereditary enemies.
Right.
Highlighting the
Agitator.
historical conflict between the houses of Saul, this goes way back to the first king, Saul,
Right,
and Agag, and frames Haman as an archetype of evil aiming for Jewish genocide.
So when Xerxes has this massive empire, and everything's going pretty hunky-dory, except for his wife that won't come to him, then he has Haman, who literally is going to throw everything into and killing and slaughtering all the Jews.
got a monkey.
Why didn't Xerxes, if he felt like, I mean, he must have felt that way, or he wouldn't have let Haman do it.
You knew that background.
What is implied to me goes back to that first chapter when the king was angered by Vashti, and he didn't issue a decree, he consulted, oh, what should I do? He went to the wise elders. So it may be that he had it out for him, but it may be that he was just too weak or not.
Let somebody else take the.
Or he just didn't have the wherewithal. And he was used to being influenced by whoever impressed
Then he
him.
can wash his hands.
Yeah. And Haman impressed him, so
It's on you guys.
I'm susceptible to that. As an adult child and alcoholic, one of the things I've learned about myself is we look outside for affirmation. I don't have it within myself to be confident, and I really have to be aware of that and try and work on it. Because when a decision needs to be made, or when I'm feeling like I need to be affirmed, I go fishing. I go fishing for compliments, for advice, and that's a weakness of mine. So I can kind of relate to, well, it's, at least I'm aware of that's a pattern that has been with me. So for somebody who looks outside for affirmation, instruction, or guidance, that's a whole personality type.
Which is kind of an irony, because Xerxes, is a ruler, and it's my way or the highway.
Mhm.
So you'd think that he would be stronger in what he is
Right.
wanting to say and
Sure.
do in the country, but yet he bows to other wishes.
He's so influenced by
And this empire that has pretty well,
Rome.
culturally different, yes, but it still has, it's working.
Mhm.
And to let this guy come in and literally kill and slaughter the Jews, it's like,
Yeah, he's just influenced by the latest
Yeah.
one who impresses him. So-
wow.
But in chapter 7, he gets his just.
Yeah, well, there you go. Tom's already,
Let's
Tom's
read
the
ahead.
Well, I
spoiler.
kept wondering, why don't they kill him? So we have to
Nobody
bring
knew that was gonna happen, you blew it.
this narcissistic Nazi
Well,
today.
there you go, yeah. I'll read from verse 7 here, because we read this earlier when we talked about Purim. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reigns, lots were cast, Purim,
Right.
in Haman's presence, to determine the best day and the best month to take action
Okay.
against all of the Jews. And the day selected was March 7th, nearly a year later. And that was one of their ways of saying, hey, the gods determined this. I just was the
Right.
instrument. We rolled the dice and the gods made that happen.
Right.
Okay, then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, there's a certain race of people scattered throughout all the provinces of your empire. So now it says there's Jews everywhere. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how he looked at it. Who keep themselves separate from everyone else. They have retained their identity. They haven't fully assimilated. They still worship their God and have their food customs. Oh my gosh, what a scandal. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So, it is not in the king's interest to let them live. Well, that's all because Mordecai wouldn't bow to him.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
right. His answer.
Up until that point, apparently they were getting along okay, and no one cared that they had their own kind of practices, and because all the provinces had flavors of that from where they came from. If it please the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the
Wow.
government
There you
administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury. So he really had it out for them.
That's a nice bribe.
The king agreed, confirming his decision by removal of his signet ring. That's where we get signature from. When the king's ring was pressed into the wax that
Yeah.
hardened, that meant it was official. From his finger, and giving it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Interesting how they have to reiterate that.
Right.
The king said, the money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit. And so he approved it. He bought whatever Haman was selling. And so on April 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and a decree was written exactly as Haman dictated. And it was sent to the king's highest officers in the respective provinces, to the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. So this is a big, long, drawn-out official process. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and signed with his, or sealed with his signet ring. Dispatches were sent by swift messengers into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all the Jews, young and old, women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day, and that day was March 7th of the next year. The property of the Jews could be given to those who killed them. That was part of the decree. A copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all the peoples, so that they would be ready to do their duty on the appointed day. Duty, yeah, right.
Oh my
At the
God.
king's command, the decree went out by swift messengers, and it was proclaimed in the fortress of Susa, that city, and the king, Haman, sat down to drink, but the city around him fell into confusion. Does anybody else have a different translation of fell into confusion?
Perplexed.
The city of Susa was bewildered.
Bewildered?
Yeah.
Perplexed.
Okay. I think, if I go back to the message,
I like that.
Eugene Peterson, the way he said it, I think he captures it. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, at the king's command, the couriers took off. The order was also posted in the palace complex of Susa, right there in the city. The king and Haman sat back and had a drink, while the city of Susa reeled from the news.
Yeah,
So when you get a decree like this,
it would.
oh,
Like shock.
yeah, the people were just in terrible shock. That's a great cliffhanger for us to stop on.
Yeah.
Um,
Isn't there some kind of a parallel here with what happened on 9/11? That there was this big thing about on this day, that you guys will go out and, I mean, it was just the
It's
irony of
interesting to
that.
see how history repeats
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
and we can look this, we can be instructed by this,
Yeah.
and we can try and draw inferences, but I do so with humility.
Right.
That may seem like it connects to me, but I'm not gonna be firm on that, because I'm
Right.
just not sure.
Right.
But I am gonna be aware of the history, how that goes. So, all right, well, I hope this was
Yeah, very good.
informative and enjoyable. Let me ask for a prayer before I close down here. Lord God, as you preserve for us this history and this inspired word, and the glimpse of what this says about our human nature and humanity and the ways that we repeatedly get off track, for what this book says about you, even without mentioning you explicitly, in the background, in the way that we kind of experience you working throughout history and in our lives. We give you thanks for these things. And I pray that this whets our appetite to continue in this study and to bring forward the things that will guide us to trust you more deeply in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.